If you needed any more reasons to believe in the future of electric vehicles and the role that lithium is going to play in this massive paradigm, unstoppable shift, then consider the following. One, the automotive industry is expected to invest $500 billion in the transition to electric vehicles by 2030. 20 million electric vehicles are expected to be sold in 2025, and the Tesla Model S alone is reported to contain about 350 kilograms of lithium per vehicle. So, based on that, enter Lancaster Resources, a great exploration company with an incredible team that's dedicated to this emerging energy sector transition through the development of Net Zero Lithium, which is a great accomplishment on its own. Lancaster thinks it's going to help power the future of carbon-free lithium development and production, and the company believes on the verge of making a discovery at their lithium brine project in New Mexico. And that's the press release we're talking about today. They received their drill permit approvals, and we're here to talk about that. Penny, welcome back.
Thanks, George. Great to be here.
Before we get into this press release, okay, and we're talking about is not you getting the permits, but why you've even gotten to this point. Big picture first, just for a minute. Let's talk about big picture lithium. What should people know about where lithium is going and why they should have exposure to lithium going forward?
Sure. I mean, lithium demand is definitely projected to increase in the near term and in the long term. And it's not just electric vehicles that's expected to fuel that demand, it's also the demand for energy storage. So, all of the changes that we're seeing to renewable energy, so whether it's a solar project or it's a wind project, all of those projects need energy storage because the supply of the energy, which is often electricity, doesn't match the demand. For example, you don't get solar power at night, but that's when you need your electricity the most. So you need to have that storage. The storage comes in the form of lithium ion batteries. So there's going to be even a bigger projected demand, even bigger demand for lithium ion storage than there even is for electric vehicles. And in addition to that, you see this growing demand through AI. So AI, as you know, requires huge computational power. So the data centers that power AI's computational demands, they need energy storage as well. And their energy storage is in the form of lithium batteries. So we're going to see an increased demand for lithium as all of these sort of major changes that are happening in the world continue on.
And I love the fact that you bring up the AI aspect, something people were even considering a year ago. But I can tell you, the Agoracom, we're using AI 1,000 times more than we're using it a year ago. So if that's just little old Agoracom, imagine what's going on in the rest of the world and the demand that's going to create for energy and why we need lithium. So wanted to talk about that big picture. It's perfect. I love the way you summarized all that because people at home are probably wondering why lithium, why Lancaster. So now that we got the why lithium out of the way, you've got a couple of great projects, but today we're going to focus on your Alkali Flat Lithium Brine project, which is in New Mexico. What work? So you've got the permits for drilling, right? But there's a reason you got those. You've done work before this stage. What work have you guys done to bring it to this stage, and why you're actually going for it?
Sure. And George, this is a very exciting project. It's really our flagship project. It's where we see the biggest opportunity that we can create in terms of value for shareholders because we think we're on the verge of a major discovery of a lithium deposit in the right area, the right type of lithium, and the right type of volumes that you would need to be commercially viable. And what we've done already, we picked the property up about a year and a half ago. And just as we were picking up the property from Rodney Blakestead and his group, they had just finished really a couple of years of research. So they took the existing data from the NER sampling program. So that was a program commissioned by the U.S. Department of Energy 50 years ago to assess uranium values across the country. And they actually did geochem sampling for uranium. But more recently, the US Geological system basically went out and retested all of that data for critical minerals, including lithium. And so the research that was done across the southwestern US by this team included looking for all of the common elements, the common things you would see, the features in every successful commercial producing lithium brine deposit, combined and matched against the NERD data, which now showed lithium values. So they were looking for a closed basin, an arid climate, a nearby volcanic activity, an old geological setting, and so on. And what they actually found in New Mexico was the second highest concentrations of lithium in the entire system, combined with every geological element that you would want to see if you were going to have a major brine deposit, including all of the elements that Clayton Valley has. Except for the only thing that we haven't been able to test yet is really what is the lithium concentration that is in the aquifers that we know are there between 100 meters and sort of 700 meters below the ground. So we've done drone surveys, we've done additional geochemical sampling. We've basically done the work to determine where below the surface is that porous rock which holds the lithium brine, and are there any anomalies? Is there any resistivity anomalies? And we found them. So we found areas 100 meters to 200 meters down and 650 meters to 700 meters down. And we used an MT survey to find that. Now, an MT survey is great for basically finding where the porous rock is and finding where the anomalies are in resistivity, but it only goes 700 meters down. So what we found were two really clear targets that are quite large. So there are two massive aquifers on our property. And even just the area that because our property is about 20 square kilometers, even just the area that we covered, those aquifers go across the entire sections. So there's a massive amount of brine, two aquifers on our property that basically aren't ending. Like, we'll continue to do our exploration work after this initial drill program. And because of the anomalies in the resistivity, we know that there's salt. And where there's salt, it's highly likely that there's lithium as well. And because we've already done the surface analysis, which I think was up to around 146 parts per million, that's a pretty significant anomalous level for lithium. Even on the surface, we expect it to be much higher when we drill down. So that's the exciting thing about what we've done and sort of where we're going.
So what's great is you've got all the indicators, first from the big, government survey and all the work they did, plus all the work that you guys done on surface and just a little bit below. You've pretty much got everything lined up. So now it's just a case of drill, baby, drill, right? What are you hoping to accomplish with the drill program? Is it, I mean, there's so many things you guys can accomplish. What are you guys really looking to accomplish with it?
Really, this is our first drill program, our exploratory well that will go down and test both those aquifers. And although we'll be testing everything all the way along the way, the most, I guess, exciting part will be to see what is the level of concentration of lithium in both of those aquifers. If it's more than 100 parts per million, it's going to be commercial. But we could be significantly higher, which then it gets to be very, very interesting, because then the value will be much higher as well.
And most of the time, companies, Georgecom Lithium, Georgecom Resources, you need multiple and multiple drilling programs in order to really figure out what you got, the depth, the size, the grade, all that. But you guys are pretty confident, or at least I want to say you have a lot of reason to believe that you're on the verge of making this discovery on this maiden drill program. You think you're going to get a lot of the data you need to delineate a resource just from this maiden program? That's pretty incredible. I don't think I've ever heard of that before, actually.
It's the type of deposit. I mean, we're not looking for a hard rock deposit. We are not looking for a clay deposit. There might be one there, but that doesn't interest us. It's much easier to define a lithium brine resource, because we know where the liquid is, or we know where the porous rock is, and then we just have to measure the concentration of lithium, multiply that by the volume we already know we have, and theoretically we have a resource. And we've talked already to several groups about, would you be able to give us that resource estimate? And so, of course, it's dependent on our results, but that will be, the next catalyst that we'll be looking to achieve is it a resource estimate? And so that's pretty exciting, that we would potentially be able to do that a lot faster than if we were trying to define a hard rock resource, even in lithium. But traditionally people are expecting a lot of drilling to happen. Doesn't mean we won't do more drilling. If we're successful in defining a resource very quickly, we will likely do a lot more drilling to expand that resource. And as I said before, those aquifers are going, they're not stopping on all sides of the area that we tested. That was just an eighth of our property that we tested. So this could be basically a massive area. It could be a massive deposit.
And if you don't mind, I'm glad you touched on it. Hard rock versus lithium brine. There are a lot of people at home who won't understand the difference. I'm not asking you to make them a geology major, but just generally speaking, fireside chat wise, just explain a little bit about the difference between hard rock and lithium brine, which I think we can all kind of discern by just the names, but why lithium brine is so much faster for you to get to a decision as opposed to a hard rock deposit.
Yeah, I mean, with lithium brine, it's in a brine that is hosted in a porous rock and aquifer. So once you kind of reach that with your first drill hole, that same drill hole that's your discovery well could actually become a production well, because ultimately, if you get into production, you just have to pump that. I call it water. Brine is essentially a salty water that you pump up, and then when it comes to the surface, if you know something about what they've done in the salars in South America, is a lot of times in the history of sort of production of lithium, they would just let that lithium sit on the surface. It's so easy. You just let it sit there and evaporate over 7 years, and then you have your end product. But there's been a lot of technology development, because that sort of situation isn't really feasible. I mean, it was used in Clayton Valley, but it's not really economically friendly, because you potentially suck up the water from, all the neighbors who
I
have
want to do
wells.
that now.
And you want something that's a lot faster than just sitting there and waiting for the sun to evaporate the water in 7 years. So the technologies that have been developed is called direct lithium extraction. And these technologies now are basically, now they're at that commercial viability stage where they've done their bench scale models. There's been some that have done commercial level testing, and it's incredibly economically feasible. It makes so much more sense from an environmental perspective as well, because if you can imagine the amount of energy you need to take lithium out of hard rock or take lithium out of clay, you're blasting out elements that are attached to other elements. But to get lithium out of a brine is really simple. You can use these ions that attach to the lithium as you pump the water out. They attach to the lithium, and then the water without the lithium goes kind of back down into the aquifer. So there's minimal damage to the environment. And it's a very simple extraction process. So you're left with the lithium and various other chemicals. There's been a lot of development on DLE technology by a great number of companies. And what's cool about that too is each technology is better suited for a certain type of chemical composition in the brine. So as we're doing our testing, we'll be finding out more information about what is the exact chemical composition of the brine that we have. And then we'll do a follow-up with the various DLE companies we've been talking to and say, hey, like, we have low magnesium. Does this work for your DLE technology? Or, do a test with ours and give us an economic evaluation of what this will result in. So I think for car companies, the whole reason people are buying EVs is because they want to be more efficient and save money for gas. But for a lot of people, what's driving this decision is a desire to create less chaos in the environment. Like, they want to be carbon friendly. So it makes a lot of sense for car companies to source their lithium for their lithium ion batteries from a company that has like a very little impact on the environment. And so when we talk about net zero production of lithium, we're talking about using DLE combined with something like solar or geothermal power, both of which are available in New Mexico in our location. We're very close to a known geothermal source that's operating, and we're close to numerous solar sources, and we're in talks with one of them about providing us with solar power for our lithium production facility. Should we be
Yeah,
successful?
and by the way, I've heard, so it's so great that you mentioned that. I've heard that um, companies are going to be audited, during their whole carbon credit, the NU, let's say the auto manufacturer, they're going to be audited not just for, hey, do you have a lithium ion battery? Okay, great, check. Now it's, where'd you get it from? How much environmental damage was created from that in order to get it for you? Because if Georgecom Lithium has to create all this environmental damage, suck out all this water, cause problems with water in order to deliver the lithium, then they're no good to the car company,
Yeah.
to the end user. So the way you guys have got it set up is net zero or as close to it, or maybe just net zero, which is a huge advantage when you're looking to sign offtake agreements. So what does that look like? I know we might be talking a little bit early, but at the same time, given what you're saying in your press releases and that you think you might be on the verge of a discovery during your main drill program, I'm assuming end users, auto manufacturers, definitely have you on their radar because that's their job to look out for companies like you. You know, would you expect to potentially enter into an offtake agreement to sell lithium?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's going to be a shortage of lithium in the next within the next 10 years, and the car companies are being very proactive, and we've already started conversations with some of them. I mean, of course, they say like,
Wow.
let us know what your first drill results are, but there's definitely conversations starting now, and you'll see announcements from other companies of really big investments from car companies and companies that are exploring for lithium that you know a lot earlier than you would expect. And so we're excited about that potential of entering into an offtake agreement with a major car company or getting a major equity investment, as you've seen happen with a couple of different companies. So that's definitely something that could happen.
And to be clear, I had no idea that you had even started discussions with car companies before we got on this interview. So that's pretty spectacular. I just figured after you start your drill program, results start coming out, maybe you might get phone calls or expressive interest. But that's really saying something about how much demand there is, right? And I want to speak to that, Penny, in terms of devil's advocate. A lot of people are thinking, well, lithium prices are way down, so the lithium fun is over. But how do you feel, devil's advocate, about it, and how do you respond to that if people ask you, is this a good time to invest in lithium in general, not Lancaster, because we don't want to give out, financial advice. But how do you respond to people who are saying, well, maybe it's not a good time to invest in lithium?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people will say that's the time you do invest. That's the time when you can experience the most capital growth is if you invest at the down cycle, right? So yes, lithium prices are a bit depressed right now. Shares of lithium companies are probably at their low that they've been in a couple of years. But we saw how much they increased a couple of years ago when the cycle went up. And those people that got into those lithium deals early, they made a lot of money, and assuming they sold at the right time. But right now is definitely a great time to invest in lithium. Who knows when it will start to go up again? It could be a month, it could be 3 months, it could be a little longer, but this is the time, in my opinion, that there's some really great lithium companies out there that you can buy their stock at a much better sort of price than say a year ago. So it's a really good opportunity to be able to make a huge capital gain.
Yeah, and I would say anytime you're investing in a paradigm shift, for example, streaming of movies, Netflix was the leader in streaming of movies. If you believe back then, 25 years ago, that was going to be a paradigm shift, you don't necessarily worry about what the return is that you're going to get in a month or 3 months or even 12 months. You're looking 3, 5 years out because you want to be a part of that. So I think that's important when you say, where people's horizons have to be, because there really is no doubt. I don't know, maybe there's someone out there who's making an argument against it, but there really is no doubt that lithium is going to play a critical process in all of this. So I'm glad you addressed it that way, because right now, yeah, devil's advocate, the price of lithium has dropped, and a lot of supplies come on, and there's some consternation about uptake of electric vehicles, but the long term, that hockey stick growth to me looks unstoppable. Let's talk for a second about, you mentioned his name earlier. People probably didn't understand who you're referring to. Rodney Blakestead. You mentioned that name earlier. Tell us about his history in prospecting and why that influenced your decision to option the Alkali Flat Lithium Brine project from him?
Sure. And Rodney's leading our geological program in New Mexico at the Alkali Flat Project, and we did option it from him and his team. And Rodney was really the driving force behind all the research that was done on that property. So he's a very successful geologist. I think he's been involved in over 40 discoveries in his career, mostly in gold. And he's been the person responsible for actually the prospector who discovered some of the biggest gold deposits in Alaska. So he actually found the biggest one, which was producing over $10 billion worth of gold. So he's a very smart guy. And the way that every time the way that he's approached it, as he's told me over the years, is he does a huge amount of research. So this research heavy approach is like what he did on Alkali Flat, because about 5 years ago, he turned his attention to lithium. And this research heavy approach is, I think, a cornerstone of his success in discovering major resources. And that research that he applied to the Alkali Flat area, every time I talk to him, I'm blown away at his knowledge on the background and the research he's done into lithium deposits. And it's pretty exciting because I think there's very few people in the world who have that knowledge base of, really where to look for a lithium brine deposit in the US. And finding it in the US is so important too. And I do want to mention, George, because, the US Inflation Reduction Act basically requires car companies to source their lithium from the United States if they're going to be able to pass on these certain rebates to the end consumer. And there's only one producing lithium deposit in the United States right now, and it's Clayton Valley. And what we have looks just like Clayton Valley. So when Rodney's doing his research, he's saying, look, this is what Clayton Valley has, and our project has this. Even now when we did our MT study and we found those targets that are 200 meters down and 700 meters down, that's the same sort of depth of aquifer that Clayton Valley has, and what they've relied on to be, producing massive amounts of lithium for the past decades, right? So the research that Roddy did and his success and his sort of dedication to all the preliminary work you do before really going boots on the ground, I think that's fundamental to his success, and we're really excited to be working with him.
And really quickly, I know you got to go because you are a woman on the run. I love how you run your company. You've got so many things going on. Really quickly, timeline. When does the drilling? When does everything begin? And what does the cadence look like? Just so we know what to look for at Lancaster this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking to drilling companies right now. It took us 9 months to get our permits. So we had lots of conversations ongoing, but you can't really, pull that trigger until you know exactly when you can go in and do the drill. So we're having discussions right now. We got to find a drilling company that's available. Our favorite drilling company looks like they might be available. So that will be something, once we lock down that time, it's going to take only a couple weeks to drill. We expect to get the results within 6 weeks of that drilling, and then we'll make those public.
This is going to be a great summer. So good luck with locking that all down, Penny. Thanks for joining us. Amazing overview of both the company and its Alkali Flat Project in New Mexico. Amazing. Can't wait to see what's up. But thanks for joining us. And for everybody at home, you've been watching or been listening by podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, your favorite podcast platform. To Penny White, she's a CEO at Lancaster Resources, trades in Canada, LCR for our friends in the US, LANRF. For those new to the story, start your due diligence on Agoracom and then get over the Lancaster Resources website. Do your deep dive due diligence because you believe in the future of electric vehicles, of energy, and the role that lithium is going to play. Then you've got to take a close look at Lancaster Resources. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time.
Hey Small Cap fam, I hope you loved this interview because more than a dozen people were involved in its production for the sole purpose of making you happy. If so, can you take a moment to support both our awesome guest company and Agoracom? Your engagement means the world to us. First, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up by tapping that like button. It's a small gesture that helps this interview reach even more potential investors to discover today's guest. Second, We would love to hear your feedback on this interview, so please leave a comment below. Be sure to keep it clean, but feel free to poke fun at George. If you loved what you heard on today's video and want to dig into our guest company right away, take a look at the links in the description below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another great Agora.com small cap video. Thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. Make sure to come back soon.